A government announcement appears to have removed any immediate threat to the devolved institutions. There will be an independent assessment of paramilitary organisations involving the security services and the police. Following the Chief Constable's recent statement that IRA members were behind the murder of Kevin McGuigan last month, this new development has paved the way for roundtable talks involving the 5 main political parties next Monday. This report from our political correspondent, Stephen Walker.
Around Parliament buildings in recent weeks, there has been little to smile about. Today, newlyweds Leah and Scott Turnahan celebrated married life in the September sunshine. As they enjoyed their big day, elsewhere on the Stormont estate, political relationships were being put back together. In order to get unionists around the talks table, the Secretary of State, Theresa Villiers, made this announcement. She wants dedicated funding for agencies working to tackle criminality and organised crime. There's to be an assessment of the structure, role and purpose of paramilitary organisations. That will be independently reviewed by 3 people. Their names will be announced next week, and that report will be published in October. It's all supported by the DUP.
While many of us had expressed our view about the consequences of the Chief Constable's assessment, the government had indicated verbally its position but had not indicated any intention to take any steps. I'm glad that the Secretary of State has done so.
So what will this fresh assessment of paramilitary activity actually tell us?
What happened today appears to be an enabling power to get people into talks. I don't envisage that we're going to be arriving at a situation 4 weeks from now that something is going to happen which is going to prevent us from moving forward. I think we're all around long enough to know that this is about getting the work finished.
The Ulster Unionist Party, who left the talks recently because of their concerns over paramilitary activity, described Theresa Villiers' statement as positive.
We're going back into the talks on the basis of that statement from the Secretary of State, which is what we called for ahead of our executive today. We're unanimous about that.
The SDLP called today's announcement a pop-up assessment, and the alliance demanded a cross-party commitment to tackle the paramilitaries.
So it's back to a familiar place with a very familiar agenda. After days of talks about talks, it now seems inter-party discussions will begin here on Monday. Stephen Walker, BBC Newsline, Stormont.
Before we came on air, our political editor gave me his assessment of next week's party talks.
Well, certainly it looks like a better prospect than this week, in as much as this week we were stuck in a phase of talks about talks. Now on Monday we will get roundtable negotiations going with both the unionist parties present. It is, though, still the start of a process rather than the conclusion of a process, but the Secretary of State can at least be satisfied that she has really achieved a balancing act, giving the unionists enough to tempt them back into dialogue without completely alienating Republicans.
But what obstacles still remain?
Well, significant obstacles. Whilst the unionists are going to return to the talks, the Ulster unionists will remain out of government. They are firmly in opposition. And the DUP are saying that their protest action, which involves this business of their ministers holding their departments vacant by rotating their resignations and their renominations, that will continue. And then, of course, you get into the whole business of the talks. You've got welfare reforms still to be sorted out. Sinn Féin looking for what they term a creative and imaginative approach from the British government to that. And at the same time, the shadow there of this assessment of paramilitary activities. What will happen if the assessment panel repeats the Chief Constable's verdict in about 6 weeks' time? What impact will that have on any kind of tentative agreements that might have been achieved by them?